Hey everyone, welcome to Movie Marathons HQ, where we do movie marathons connected to new releases and where we enjoy and review some of our favorite movies. This video is part of the Avatar, Fire and Ash movie marathon, where we have been watching one movie every week as we prepared for the release of this movie. This is the movie we've been preparing for, so that's exciting. Today we are discussing Avatar, Fire and Ash, released in 2025 and directed by Canadian James Cameron. This is the third Avatar movie. It has been 3 years since we last saw Avatar: The Way of Water, and it's been 3 years since our last visit to the moon Pandora. The Way of Water ended up being the third highest grossing movie of all time when not adjusted for inflation. It currently sits behind the original Avatar and Avengers Endgame. This is a spoiler-free review, so I will not spoil any major plot points as we discuss the positives and negatives. Overall, I did like this movie, but I did like it less than Avatar and Avatar: The Way of Water. It's not a huge decrease in quality, but there's the least going on and the least going for this movie compared to the other two. And I'll go into this more in the negatives, but it's also oppressively long. For positives, I would mention the visuals, the musical score, the discussions of morality, and the villains. And for negatives, I would mention a few micro negatives about the annoying teenagers, the language use, the muddy main character-ness of the movie yet again. And then for full negatives, there is a trope that my friend recognized that's a negative, and also the largest negative is just the runtime and the pace of this movie. You can watch my full review of this movie over on YouTube. The first positive of Avatar, Fire and Ash are the visuals. We knew going into it that this would likely be the case, and it certainly is. It's gorgeous, and there's some scenes that are really breathtaking. The visuals of this world and the underwater realm continue to be explored, so we get more of that in Avatar, Fire and Ash. It really is sensational. To me, it looks like they sent a film crew onto this planet and said, hey, will you just film the local wildlife and the characters on there in their natural environment? And then they delivered it to us here on Earth. That's really what it looks like. There's one scene in particular when some characters are in flight on one of their banshee creatures, and then they decide to land. And as this creature comes flying down onto a riverbed, there's water droplets that come up because of the wind from the creature's wings, and the water vapor comes up and creates a rainbow prism effect, and then the sunlight is kind of going through the creature's wings in a translucent way. It just is a little simple nothing shot, but that one stood out to me more than anything else in the movie. It just seemed like this creature really landed on a riverbed. So it's really incredible what they're able to do with the visuals. One thing I didn't like is I noticed that Jake Sully's avatar in this movie looks different than it did in the first one. And I don't just mean haircut, I mean like facial qualities look different. If you look at a side-by-side that I'll post here of the avatar in the first movie and the avatar here, I think it just looks very different. The eyes are smaller now, and some of the facial features are different. It never really looked like Sam Worthington to me, but still we understood that this was the character version of the Avatar Na'vi people. I just think they changed him a lot, which is just weird to do. But otherwise, the visuals in this movie are incredible. My next positive is the musical score. I had this as a positive in the first Avatar. I don't think the music is that crazy good, but there are some motifs and some moments that I really like in the first Avatar where the music punches in and really dials up the emotion in the scene. That movie was scored by James Horner, who has since passed away. So Avatar: The Way of Water was scored by Simon Franklin, and I didn't think that score stood out much at all. It didn't seem to have recurring themes. Maybe I need to listen to it from beginning to end, but I didn't. So in Avatar: Fire and Ash, we get Simon Franklin again, and this time I felt like the score was more powerful. There were some moments where it came in and added to the movie, and some musical motifs from the first and second movie played in here, so I felt more like, oh, this is an Avatar score. I get it. I know what I'm listening to. So that would make it a positive in my books. Another positive that I found are the discussions on morality. So without getting into spoilers and specific details, there are a lot of discussions about what is right and what is wrong, a lot of conversations about what's moral and what's immoral, and there are some existing characters and some new characters that challenge the way things have been in a really interesting way. And so they have these discussions about morality that I thought were really elevated and really unique. They had some cool dilemmas that they had to overcome, and different characters had different perspectives, and they had to really dialogue and work through what that would mean. So I really liked some of the discussions on morality in Avatar: Fire and Ash. And then another positive would be the villains. So in this movie, we're introduced to another tribe of Na'vi people. This time they're called the Manquan clan, and they have a really interesting backstory where they believe that the deity Eywa exists, but they no longer believe in her. They've cast off their belief in her. And they feel like she does not respond to the people and does not answer their prayers, so to speak. It's just a really interesting perspective that they really believe in. Their leader, Varang, played by Ona Chaplin, is especially interesting, both her character and why she does what she does and how she does what she does, but also the performance capture on her is really, really unique. I noticed lots of lip movements and very small eye movements that the actor must have done, and the performance captured it and translated it into the visuals. In her close-ups, there's some really, really cool moments from her as a villain, which I appreciated. So she's really cool. And then Quaritch, who was the main villain in the first movie, who died, and he was brought back as in an avatar body in The Way of Water. I didn't love him in The Way of Water, but I think here they've really increased what he's able to do. He's a very interesting character, and he's got a lot more to do in this movie than he had in the past, and they added a lot of dimension to him. So he's really, really interesting in this movie, and way better here. I still like him best in the first Avatar, but his characterization here is also positive. So the villains overall are pretty great. Now for some micro negatives that aren't really enough to talk about on their own, but still things I wanted to mention. The teenagers in this movie are still really annoying. I said in The Way of Water that was a negative or a micro negative for me, that how annoying these teenagers were, and they're supposed to be because they're teenagers. But one of the things I didn't like was how they keep saying bro in the second movie, and I don't understand why aliens not from Earth and not from 2020's Earth would say bro so much. I know it means brother, but it just still seems so out of place. No joke, I think the first lines in this movie, or at least the first lines from one of these teenagers, is like, wait up, bro. So they're still annoying. There's also some negatives of the language use. I don't understand why they're speaking so much English. In the first movie it made sense, in the second it doesn't, and here it doesn't. They use way too much English, and I don't understand it. It still feels muddy about who the main character of this movie is. Is it Jake? Is it Kiri? Or is it Loak? Or is it even somebody else? I know that there's a lot of supporting characters, but I just don't know who the main character is or who I root for. So it just feels really muddy. So those are just some micro negatives that aren't really enough to fill up their own time. So I just throw them all together. And now another negative is a trope that my friend Nolan recognized. So shout out to Nolan. In this movie and in the other two Avatar movies, there's a trope that they use. And it's fine. It is a fine trope that has its place, but once you recognize it, you see how silly it is. In all three of these movies, so many different times, a bad guy usually takes one of our good guys and holds a knife to their neck. And they always get out of it. They've never once done anything about it. But it's seriously like dozens of times where different characters have a knife to their neck, and then something happens and they get away from the knife and they're okay. They're not hurt, they're not injured. So it's just a trope that they use that's so weird, and when you realize how many times they've done it in all three movies, it just looks silly. So I'm not saying I'm a better screenwriter, but it just has no stakes. After a while, you're like, well, they're going to get out of that. And there's no dread or no fear that the character might actually get hurt because they never do anything about the knife to the neck. They hold it there. The characters certainly look scared, but as an audience, it takes me out of it because I know that they're probably going to get out of it because they have so many times before. So it's just an over-reliance on a silly trope. Now, the final negative is the runtime. I mentioned this before. but this movie is oppressively long. It clocks in at 3 hours and 15 minutes. Long movies are okay. Some movies have a story that needs to be told in every minute of screen time that they have. But in Avatar Fire and Ash, there are so many subplots and even sequences that I think could be completely removed to shave off like 20 or 30 minutes from this movie, and the story would have been preserved and would have been just fine. If you want to know specifically which ones I would have removed, that would be spoilery, but maybe I'll put that in the comments below, what sections I think could have been removed and not affected the story in a huge way. But this movie is so long, I felt like my rights were being stripped away as I was watching it. I felt like I can't leave, I'm captive here. And the movie lags kind of in the middle, so I was looking at my watch and other people around me were checking their phones and checking their watches, so then I would notice what time it was because they turn on their phone. And it's so long. And the other movies are long. It's not like this one is crazy longer. I think it is the longest of the three, but it's not much longer. But this one feels a lot longer, so that's the main difference. So I wish it would have been trimmed up and shorter, but that's certainly a negative for me. So how did the other movies in the Avatar franchise connect to Avatar Fire and Ash? Well, I was right about a few things. In the first movie, they talk about the deity Eywa and how the Na'vi believe in her, and there's a connection between all beings. That is further explored in Avatar Fire and Ash. Also in the second movie, we are introduced to Kiri, who is the biological daughter of Dr. Grace Augustine from the first movie, and she seemed to have a particular connection to Eywa, which I thought would be contrasted by the Manquan people who have rejected Eywa. And that happened. I won't get into spoilers of exactly how, but that clash certainly continued. And then I also predicted that the heartbreak and trauma of the death of Jake and Neytiri's son would carry over into this movie, and those themes of loss are very strong in this movie. So pretty cool connection between the two movies to this one. So that's my review of Avatar Fire and Ash. What do you think of this movie? Do you plan on seeing it in theaters, or do you plan on seeing it at all? I do recommend seeing this movie in theaters if you're interested. I saw it in IMAX 3D, which is really cool. I don't think the 3D was necessary. As I've said before in previous reviews, I missed the theatrical run of the first Avatar movie, and that was the one where the 3D was, from what I hear, outstanding. So this one I don't think had the same, but I would recommend seeing it in IMAX if you can. The huge screens and the sequences really lend themselves to a large screen, so that's really cool. It's also going to release on Disney Plus sometime next year, I'm sure. So if you don't want to see it in theaters, you could wait until you watch it at home. There is no next movie in this marathon, as we have completed the Avatar Fire and Ash movie marathon. Reportedly, Avatar 4 and 5 are in the works. But to be honest, I would be fine if this was the last Avatar movie. I enjoy them, but I don't think I have much more gas in the tank to see more Avatar movies. So I guess the studio and James Cameron will decide if they're going to continue with those. And if this movie ends up being as profitable as the first two, I think they would do it anyways. So there's no more movies in this marathon until Avatar 4 and 5 happen, if they do. And at that point, we'll do a new marathon and watch them all again. Follow Movie Marathons HQ on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, and also on Letterboxd, where you can see all of the movie marathons we've got going on right now. See you at the movies.